Welcome to today's webinar on behind the scenes of Smart City, Mesa's Arizona journey from smart street lighting to public Wi-Fi. Good afternoon, everyone. We're thrilled to have you join us today. I am Michael Suarez, Associate Editor with Smart Cities Connect, a brand of Tech Connect, and today I have the pleasure of being your host. Before we dive deep into today's discussion, I just want to go over a few housekeeping instructions. In order for us to have a smooth presentation, everyone will be on mute, followed by the presentation and discussion. We'll open up the floor to questions for 20 minutes of Q&A. We encourage active participation, so please feel free to submit any of your questions in the chat or the Q&A feature, which you can find on the top right corner. We'll also do our best to address as many questions as possible. Today, we have two speakers. We have Harry Meier, Deputy Chief Information Officer Innovation from the city of Mesa, Arizona. We also have Scott McCarley, Product Manager, Connected Outdoor Solutions with Genlyte, a Signify business. So without further ado, let's kick off today's webinar, and I will hand it over to Scott.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Scott McCarley, as Michael mentioned, Product Manager for Connected Outdoor Solutions at Genlyte, a Signify business. I'm very excited to be joined today by Harry Meier, Deputy CIO for Innovation from the city of Mesa. The city of Mesa is a recognized smart city leader. In addition to managing roughly 40,000 connected streetlights, they've recently won a Smart 20 award from Smart Cities Connect for their Connect at Mesa with Public Wi-Fi project, which we'll hear more about today. Part of what is so exemplary about the City of Mesa's lighting and Smart City program is their approach. They focused on building foundational infrastructure to support digital innovation, not just executing discrete projects. And as you'll hear, they've had great success and made a real measurable difference in the lives of their citizens. So prior to talking with Harry about Mesa's program, I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking through three important foundational technologies for digital innovation, all of which stand to transform the way cities work. And they are smart lighting, sensors, and broadband high-speed connectivity. So in this discussion, I'd like to highlight the key technology developments in each of these platforms for you to be aware of, and then demonstrate how these technologies come together to increase speed of deployment and the delivery of value. And then finally, just touch on those priority outcomes that they enable, such as digital equity, safety, cost reduction. So after that, we'll invite Harry to come speak, tell us about the Smart City program from Mesa and how they're leveraging and succeeding with smart lighting, public Wi-Fi, sensors, and more. Let me kick off with just a little brief introduction to Signify. So Signify is formerly Philips Lighting. So we're the global leader in lighting and have connected over 6 million streetlights across the globe. So we're a $7 billion business with manufacturing plants and offices across the United States. Our Genlyte Solutions group offers North America a comprehensive lighting portfolio, including LED luminaires, the streetlights, advanced systems and software such as our Interact City lighting management system, as well as services. So as I mentioned, there are three foundational platforms I want to talk about: smart streetlights, sensors, and broadband connectivity. So most cities we speak with see connecting the streetlights as a common sense extension of the lighting infrastructure and an inevitability. And that's given the clear maintenance savings derived from being able to remotely identify issues and prevent truck rolls. It's also from the additional energy use reduction that results from connectivity, as well as the ability to deliver more targeted lighting schedules and profiles. So the opportunity for you is to leverage the momentum of connecting streetlights as an enabler to drive significant scale with other complementary programs. And by doing so, create more value for all of the stakeholders. So looking at the LED streetlight, so one of the most significant street lighting developments is the introduction of the new D4i driver and the Zaga socket on the bottom of the streetlight. So the new D4i driver is the digital brain of the LED lighting system. So it enables the luminaire to digitally interface with a wireless communication module, that node on top of the luminaire in a NEMA socket. So as well as to digitally interface to the sensors and affixed to the Zaga socket on the bottom. And that driver also provides access to new luminaire asset information stored within it. So D4i and Zaga D4i are industry standards, and they're open to all component and luminaire manufacturers so that it enables plug-and-play interoperability. So different manufacturers could deliver different sensors into the Zaga socket using standards. The same is true for the nodes on top. And in the field, you can change, add, and remove sensors at will in a plug-and-play fashion. So it's really stimulating innovation and being ready for this future. I would call out in particular a few certifications to keep in mind, right, in order to realize that plug-and-play interoperability. So you'll need the luminaire to be Zaga D4i certified. You need the node, the communication control node, to be Dolly D4i Part 351 Type A certified. That's kind of a mouthful to remember, but it's important. That stipulates or really defines that the node can communicate with the sensor and together collaboratively control the luminaire or bring that information to the cloud. So that's an important certification for the node to communicate with Zaga D4i sensors that go on the bottom. So that's the third certification you want to keep in mind. Okay. So key recent sensor developments and good examples of Zaga D4i sensors are in the area of adaptive lighting. These sensors drive the right light for the right situation based on local events, and that delivers better energy savings, new sustainability outcomes, maybe dark skies, for example, ensures safety by delivering the right light level and better meeting local needs who have different profiles of lighting that they may desire. So, for example, there are new sophisticated radar-based motion sensors that can screw into the Zaga socket, plug into it, that enable that safe deep dimming, and when motion is detected, such as a car, it can forward communicate to the lights up ahead that they should brighten in advance of the motion. So pretty sophisticated. But these sensors can also do things like measure traffic activity level, right? And identify what is the most appropriate light level given the change in activity level through the evening, right? So you can enable more dimming in the evening. There are, of course, many other sensors from an ecosystem of providers. So smart parking sensors that reduce traffic congestion by guiding drivers to open spaces. There are noise sensors that are being used to inform and enforce city ordinances. There are temperature sensors that help identify and mitigate heat islands, which are a serious health concern for citizens. And just as these different sensors may connect to the lighting infrastructure via different methods, either potentially the Zaga socket or wirelessly communicating with a control node, there are also different communication frequency and data volume needs for those sensors. So for example, cameras that pass live video feeds need a backhaul, data backhaul, that exceeds the capacity of the communication node. It's often not well fit for cellular backhaul. So they need some form of high-speed backhaul. So as we think about that need for high-speed backhaul that comes from cameras, or maybe it's small cells, 5G small cells, or public Wi-Fi, or other fixed wireless access points that you want to enable data services for. When cities think about how do we bring high-speed backhaul to those points, those assets, they often look to extend fiber, right? The fiber under their streets. However, the cost and disruption associated with bringing that fiber to every asset is high. Right? So the question is, how do you deliver this gigabit backhaul speed without trenching or delivering more fiber everywhere? a good answer is the broadband luminaire. So here we've embedded millimeter wave technology inside of the luminaire. So with this, you beam fiber from a hub that sits on the existing fiber in the street, and it beams it to the lighting infrastructure where these embedded radios and antennas exist to propagate that signal to other throughout the lighting infrastructure. And with that, you can offer high-speed backhaul at the luminaire, and it's shown here via ports for PoE, so you're providing power and Ethernet backhaul access. And that's also beaming that same wireless fiber, not just to the luminaire, but to other fixed access points that may be on other infrastructure. So it's important that to reflect on embedding these capabilities into the luminaire solves engineering challenges, right? And those engineering challenges come with designing different attachment solutions for all of for this type of radio functionality. You manage that attachment by embedding it in the luminaire, right? So that has a real advantage. It also preserves the aesthetic, right? So cities are very concerned about their decorative and street lights and the aesthetics associated with that. And that's a key challenge. So we're preserving that and making it easily engineer maintainable. So just to play that out, how that works or how this technology would work. So first you have your street light infrastructure mapped in the city. You would identify a few points of fiber access from the street, and you could use a street light. So again, bringing the fiber up to the street light to a radio within the luminaire, or you could use kiosks throughout the city, and they can possess a radio themselves or other devices, right, that would enclose a radio that is attached to the fiber and beaming it to the broadband luminaire. So here we're showing bringing additional that embedded millimeter wave technology to a select number of streetlights. And now we see here that we've activated this network where we're beaming fiber from the existing in-street fiber wirelessly to the streetlight infrastructure, which enables the streetlights to broadband luminaires to provide that backhaul for things like public Wi-Fi, as depicted here, or 5G, small cells. Additionally, that network of broadband luminaires creates a mesh network, which is, has a lot of advantages for ensuring access or the availability. But here it's also providing it throughout the city. So other fixed access points could leverage that wireless fiber backhaul. Places where you have not yet brought fiber. So now we think about these three foundational technologies and for digital innovation, we've aligned them, leveraging standards that can be expanded on by an ecosystem of manufacturers in a form factor that requires no special training for installation and maintains these city aesthetics. And let's see. The benefit of bringing all of that to the city is significant, right? So we have economic improvements, certainly familiar with reducing energy costs and increasing maintenance efficiency by connecting this infrastructure and putting ourselves in a better position to deploy the right lighting to the right locations just when we need it. But there's also new revenue generating capabilities as well. From a sustainability perspective, we're meeting carbon emission reductions and achieving things like the dark sky compliance. So being able to ensure that the light levels are appropriate for the different areas of the city. And then finally, meeting safety and equity goals, including things like delivering public Wi-Fi, which I'm excited to hear more about from Harry in just a moment. So with that, I'm going to invite Harry to join me. This is Harry Meier from the Deputy CIO for Innovation from the City of Mesa, Arizona. Hello, Harry.
Hello, Scott.
Thanks again for coming. Super excited for the conversation. My compliments to the City of Mesa and your program and the activities you guys have pushed. It's been fantastic to follow. And again, thank you for your time today here. So let me pose a first question to Harry. Well, first, can you just tell us a little bit about the City of Mesa and what makes Mesa such a great city?
Sure. So, not many people may know Mesa well. We are kind of in the shadow of our big neighbor, Phoenix. We've got, though, about 500,000 residents. We're roughly on par with a few state capitals, like Atlanta, Georgia, or Sacramento, California, roughly equivalent in size there. We're the 36th biggest city in the U.S. And we've gotten a lot of attention recently for these smart city programs because it turns out that size of a city is a very kind of a sweet spot where we still have a good centralized authority around technology, and we're able to work directly with a lot of departments that in some bigger cities, may have their own IT or may have some of their own ideas. So it's a very ripe environment for smart cities projects where we can really pull together multiple departments and have good collaboration. Um, lots of good things about Mesa. Like I said, we're in the Valley of the Sun here with alongside Phoenix. We're out on the east side of that area, adjacent to some natural scenery in the Sonoran Desert. The picture right there is of Red Mountain, which is to the northeast of Mesa, that right along our border. It really highlights some of the issues that we ran into when looking at the smart street lighting as one of our smart cities initiatives. That goes back all the way to 2018, 2019, when we first started doing LED conversions. And folks in this community that you saw there were very keen on the differences in LED lighting, very looking for that dark skies environment. And at the same time, in the core of our downtown, we've had a boom of redevelopment where new public transit came to our downtown in the last decade. We've got just a huge economic development boom in our downtown that's been ongoing. And in those areas, we have the opposite requests. People looking to for both public safety and for retail visibility. They want brighter, more daylight style lighting, so that it came up in a lot in our public conversations with the different communities that we have multiple zones around the city looking for different styles of light. And so that brought up into a master plan where we've found those different needs, identified them, and we're able to deliver them with a single solution. So you can have similar lights all around town, but change the dimming, change the temperature even of some of those lights depending on the zones. You can see here in these lighting zones, that northeast area where we have the natural landscape and the dark skies. That's very important in that area. Also on the north central area of Mesa there, adjacent to the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, also interested in the dark skies. The blue zones there are, traffic corridors and retail centers where you see, the need for, businesses want to, see their their signs, and they want pedestrian traffic. Also interested in public safety for the corridors on the streets. And then in our southeast, we've got a major airport, and there was some requirements for the lighting interacting with the flight paths. So all of those things, being able to address all of it with similar solutions is a big part of that master plan.
Well, that's
So
great. And
yeah,
I love looking at that master plan. It's, I think it's a great example for other cities. If they don't have a lighting master plan, I think yours provides a wonderful blueprint.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
all told, yeah, I think you mentioned we've got over 40,000 streetlights under city management. I know some other communities, there's maybe a public utility that owns the lights, but the city
Mhm.
owns the vast majority of the lights in our municipality, and it's a lot to manage. We've got a dedicated crew with a fleet of trucks that's out daily working on them.
Yeah.
And I think to date we've got about 25,000 of the Interact City control nodes deployed to them.
Hmm.
Um, so it's the roughly half, maybe a little more than half, are enabled to the capabilities that you've been talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Harry. And it seems like a growing town, and we appreciate being able to kind of work with your lighting department to also make their maintenance efforts more efficient, right? Enable a small team to do more, right? They're
For
not a
sure.
small team, but enable no team ever has enough resources. But so maybe turning to talk a little bit and ask you about your journey to deliver public
Mhm.
Wi-Fi and connect that Mesa with public Wi-Fi projects. So, can you tell us about those and what it means to the citizens living in the city?
Yeah, for sure. The journey to public Wi-Fi, to a lot of folks, this started even pre-pandemic. Cities providing public Wi-Fi is not a new thing. We lit up the core of our downtown with free public Wi-Fi. You know, coming from the city buildings and moving outwards, around libraries, museums, to the major commercial areas of our downtown. Going back to the mid-teens ish, I think 2015 ish. Um, that, but that project was at the time, we were on 802.11. I think that was AC, maybe even pre-AC. So that technology had some limits to it, and
Mhm.
uh, like most public Wi-Fi, it was best effort, not a really high quality connection. If you really needed it in a pinch, it was there for you as you're walking down the street. Would not get into, past that first wall. So it wasn't really useful for businesses around the area or even residents. Um, but the pandemic really changed that for everybody. The Not only was there uh, big spotlights put on the need for connectivity into our underserved communities, it's also highlighted the old issues that were always there with these technologies when you had kids trying to do their homework in the library parking lot and things along
Yeah.
those lines. Um, so what we set out to do was change that architecture of the Wi-Fi and utilize, some of the federal funds coming down for pandemic relief to really
Mm.
expand that coverage, get it out into those neighborhoods, make it usable, not a system that is, in Wi-Fi terms, you mesh the access points going down the street, and it's really when you mesh Wi-Fi, it takes one of the antennas that's meant to be used for end user clients and uses that to beam the signal to the next uh,
Yeah.
access point, and so on and so forth down the road. You end up cutting your available bandwidth and the performance of the network. In our testing, it cut it down to about 20%. And that's with the
Yeah.
not to name names, but a couple of different Wi-Fi hardware providers all experience that
Hmm.
same issue. So even when the networking hardware makers were saying, we've got maybe a dedicated antenna just for meshing or anything along those lines, meshing really degraded the performance.
Yeah.
So we started looking at technologies to backhaul more and more of the APs so that um, they wouldn't run into that. They wouldn't have to mesh.
Yeah.
And one technology that looked promising was this Terragraph technology that I think Facebook was funding the research into. This is going back to the late teens, early 20s.
Mhm.
And that technology was the millimeter wave. So you get, gigabit, 60 gigahertz signals in a, pencil-sized beam using an antenna array on the side of a device, and you can shoot that at up to about a football field away with
Mhm.
gigabit speeds. And we saw some good use out of that. We're partnering with a company called Ciclu that created a Terragraph node that had a 360-degree antenna array, and it was kind of a barrel-shaped device that you could put out on a pole like this, and it had PoE out. We could put to the Wi-Fi access point, and then connect that one of those endpoints to fiber, um, and that worked. But it's a little ugly. You can imagine, between the access point and the addition of the backhaul device, um, those things, it adds up when you're talking about, especially in a downtown area that may have, aesthetic standards.
Yeah.
Like as you're seeing here, we have the decorative street lights in that area. They having all of these wires and everything coming off of them for multiple devices and power supplies for those devices is just not feasible
Mhm.
in conversation with that community. So what came to the table with the broadband luminaires was taking that exact same Ciclu millimeter wave Terragraph node with the 360-degree antennas and embedding it in the light itself. So now, we went from, uh, a power supply, a Ciclu device, an AP, and, cables and power cables connecting all of that stuff together to just the light itself with one cable going to the AP. So,
Mhm.
as you see in the pictures, much cleaner looking install. That
Yeah.
center one shows one with an AP, and the one on the right there shows them hanging an AP on that same pole, or a different pole, in the different styles, and it works out very well actually. Um, so that technology was a game changer for us to be able to simplify these installs. So again, we're not doing multiple truck rolls to install different devices. Some of those are different networking skills. Like the
Mhm.
hanging the Wi-Fi AP and hanging a millimeter wave device that you have to aim is different skills. We may involve multiple truck rolls. With By embedding it in the light, it's the truck roll when they go out to change that light to LED is the same one as installs the backhaul. And
Mhm.
then when the Wi-Fi comes along later, it's so we went from upwards of 3 to 4 truck rolls down to maybe 2.
Yeah.
So that's a huge cost savings in the
That's big.
deployment as well. And also, as you mentioned, the fiber optic option, when we looked at the cost effectiveness of doing millimeter wave hops in this middle mile scenario. So I mean, we've got fiber backbone, and the the end point, the last mile in this scenario is the Wi-Fi. But that middle mile, that connectivity out to those harder to reach areas, fiber was looking astronomical. We know fiber well. Mesa's also got part of our bigger picture digital equity program was working with fiber providers to bring fiber to every household in the city. And I could have a whole separate separate webinar on that one, but but we were working with the fiber providers, and we were working on ways to make running fiber cheaper for them and for us in using our engineering standards and new techniques to micro trench fiber into places. And even with those techniques, the using millimeter wave for this middle mile was an order of magnitude cheaper, and provides. I mentioned meshing the Wi-Fi would reduce the performance down to 20%. So that's an 80% reduction in performance. Using the millimeter wave with the Terragraph, we only saw at most a 20% reduction from direct to fiber. So that means, and most of the time it was somewhere in the maybe 10%. So in most cases, we were getting 900 megabit to gigabit speeds on that millimeter wave connection to backhaul the APs out into the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And as you showed with your diagram, another nice thing about Terragraph is it's self-healing and auto rerouting. So you can create chains and loops around those neighborhoods. Let's say, in our case, we have a lot of traffic signals fiber. So we work with our transportation department to get to that nearest major intersection where they might have fiber or where we might have a backbone going down a road. And we start there with the distribution point, hop down the street through the neighborhood, and then connect up to a different area where we've got another chain that goes to a different intersection. Now we've got redundant connections to the fiber. So if any of those street lights have an issue or anywhere along that chain or in that loop goes bad, those connections still survive. They just auto reroute to the surviving point of presence where you have fiber. So very, very good technology.
Yeah. So how many, what type of geographic coverage do you have today? What are your aims for that?
Sure. So I mentioned we've had the core of our downtown for going on a decade. We expanded out from that to a full square mile around our downtown into the adjoining neighborhoods. Then, south from there into the, a more underserved neighborhood that's, semi-urban, semi-industrial, but still residential areas where we have a lot of low-income need. And then in both directions from there. Again, the pandemic shone a big light on where the need was greatest. And so when lockdowns happened, our local school district did some surveys of families looking for where did they need additional help with computing and connectivity for kids to get online. And we got some of that data and heat mapped it across our city, and it was a very, very clear swath through the center of our city, about 10 square miles where there was the greatest need. And that happened to also coincide well with the HUD qualifying census tracts for low to moderate income. No surprises there, but it was really good to see a validation of both the census federal data and local survey data that really highlighted where we needed that. So the 10 square mile area has always been the big goal. We want to cover all of it. The inflation kind of cut into that. We got to about 4 square miles of that with the ARPA funds. We're still shooting to keep expanding. We were able to use a community development block grant purchase some of these broadband luminaires and create some of those loops and chains into additional areas where we don't have the Wi-Fi yet. So we're building that infrastructure for the future. That middle mile is the key word there. Yeah, and that's it's been a journey, like you said.
So, I mean, fantastic information also about funding, right? So if others out there are looking to deploy, something similar, it's good to get pointers to which funding sources would, potentially be applicable. I think a question we always hear is, who manages the network, right? Maybe do you want to talk a little bit about,
Sure.
who manages it, maybe well, I'll let you go from there, but that's a frequent question.
Yeah, management. So we're entirely centrally managed. The information technology for the city does control the Wi-Fi network centrally. We have a separated guest network path for the guest access, so that the firewalls don't intermingle and the public internet goes out a separate path. We do have a good fiber backbone to the city, so we have fiber out to the what we affectionately call the Fiber Hotel in downtown Phoenix, where all of the major internet providers have meet me points there for fiber, and so we do have access to good backbone connections. So we have multiple 10 gig connections, and we dedicate a couple of them just to public access. So that's all managed through the central IT of the city. And that portion is easy to do. And I mentioned we have a streetlights team. They're the ones who do that initial truck roll to replace the lights and deploy the lights with the embedded millimeter wave in them. From there, we have contractors that do the Wi-Fi access points. We have a long-term study into the maintenance costs of that to figure out whether or not it's worthwhile either continuing that with using contractors to maintain, or to maybe IT needs to get their own bucket truck in the future to go out and do maintenance. That's a question that's still on the table. The network is still fairly young. We're only a few years into the pandemic, so we've deployed a lot of these out there, and we're still a few years away from the age and weather taking its toll on the access points that are out in the field. So we'll see in the future what those long-term costs end up being.
And I know we're going to open it up probably pretty soon to questions from others, but I'm going to sneak in a couple on you, Harry.
Sure.
So what else do you use? You've created this high-speed backhaul, opportunity throughout the city, and what else are you doing besides public Wi-Fi access points?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, this is a middle mile connectivity, and we use that terminology with the CDBG funding to we're basically improving a neighborhood by creating that middle mile connectivity mesh into the area, and that's usable for all sorts of city services. We've got these backhauling cameras. I've got a smart parking system that utilizes multiple cameras around our downtown, and those either connect directly off of or via the Wi-Fi using this same middle mile. We've got other camera systems. We've got a real-time crime center that puts cameras in parks and other potentially dangerous areas where people, want that public safety visibility to the real-time crime center. Um, I mentioned that we've got a traffic signals network that utilizes a lot, that has a lot of the fiber already, but they've got the intelligent traffic systems can also utilize these to get down the street to maybe a traffic signal that they don't have fiber to.
Mhm.
Um, we also run a triple utility. We are a water, gas, and electric utility for the city of Mesa. And so we've got a number of SCADA sites, water pumps and whatnot that
Mhm.
are out and about to wells in the neighborhoods that are sometimes hard to get to. Um, that's another nice thing about Terragraph is it's a layer 2 network, so you can segment that any way you wish, and you want to create a separate segment for higher security traffic, you can absolutely do that. So it's a very versatile network, though. We've got a lot of city use cases on it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Michael, this is the last question for Harry, and then so are you able to kind of scope what's the adoption, right? Are you able
Oh
to,
yeah.
or at least speak to, how much use, is the network getting? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think you have a slide on that. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we do report quarterly to our city management about the utilization of these networks. They are interested in the return on that investment that we've put out for the capital investment of building out this network. You'll see there on the right the map of connections to the Wi-Fi access points. That big core right over the Mesa label is our downtown, where I mentioned we have that we had that heat bubble of need, where we've
Mhm.
done the bulk of the deployments. That area is still growing. It's going to be going a little bit to its east and to the southwest of that main bubble. We'll be expanding more access points. And you see there on the left the number of connections to the Mesa Wi-Fi. That number is like connections. It basically connection hours.
Mhm.
We add up in any given hour how many people are using that and aggregate it on a monthly number. And see the number is upwards of 1 million connection hours in any given month of people using our Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Um, Down below, we also I think you may have mentioned we have also a private cellular CBRS network, 21 towers connecting that same zone of 10 square miles, and we've got upwards of 4,000 households riding that network, and even one of those towers is actually backhauled by a broadband luminaire. So
That's great.
that's been a great success story as well on the digital equity front. Providing in-home cellular routers to households that are falling through the cracks of all the other programs and
Yeah.
private subsidized connections that are available. The city is not an ISP. We're not in that business to sell Wi-Fi, but we partner with our local communities and local nonprofits to make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks, that they have that
Yeah.
connectivity. And we've got multiple ways to provide that, both Wi-Fi, CBRS, and through the private sector as well.
Well, that's wonderful, Harry. So thank you for going through that, and just again, compliments to the program. It's certainly a world-class program offering public Wi-Fi, but doing so much more as well. So
Thank you.
wonderful to hear.
Yes, wonderful presentation. We got lots of questions. I want to encourage people who have more questions. We might not get to all of the questions, but we will definitely reach out to you offline. So feel free to drop in your questions in the chat. The first question we have is for Harry, and they want to know, about your city's IT department. Was there any concern with security when it came to providing that public Wi-Fi access? And is it a completely separate fiber from any of the traffic related fiber infrastructure?
Sure. Yes. So early on, when demand wasn't as high, we would still segment the traffic, and but it was somewhat intermingled. You know, we would still go through the same enterprise firewalls. All the Wi-Fi traffic, the architecture on the back end uses a centralized controller system. So all those Wi-Fi access points go into a centralized controller. All the traffic from there has its own dedicated link through the firewalls. So the public traffic is pretty was pretty well segmented that way. When we started expanding, it definitely came up in the conversations as a early concern, and so we did build out a separate set of firewalls to segment that traffic out a different path. It is still the same fiber. That's mostly VLAN separation, at the layer 2, but it is kept separate. So we have. It also helps too with public internet access. Is very different from corporate internet access. So when the city has its enterprise firewalls and its policies, its web filtering, all of that is centered around the policy for employees. Now, we in past years always had that same issue with library patrons and other city managed public networks. So we had lessons learned from those communities. So in your cities, I would recommend talking to your libraries, because the same challenges that you're going to see with library patrons having free internet access at computers in the library, you're going to see out in the public. So that's what we modeled it on. So we on those separate firewalls now, we have the same policy for outbound internet as we do in our library is going to our public.
Awesome, thank you. I think this is probably for Scott. They're asking if a city of almost 9,000 people can implement public Wi-Fi in a cost-effective manner in a small downtown through this technology.
I appreciate you pointing it to me, Michael, and I'll weigh in. I think we've probably got a global expert here on the call in Harry. The answer is yes, right? Conceivably, there's nothing I think Harry spoke to. Sometimes it's easier in a smaller city, smaller mid-size, which is, that sounds like the case of, someone was saying 9,000. I think they scoped it to lights. But, from a technology perspective, absolutely. And, I think I'm, working for the private side for businesses. I'm often impressed by the network that cities have, meaning the networking opportunity to work with other cities, to learn from their best practices and try to replicate it. So, I'd offer maybe Harry to just turn it to you for how would you recommend they take a first step or to look into doing something like this?
Yeah, for all projects like this, it's a matter of where do you start and how do you scale. Um, as I mentioned earlier, the starting at your city buildings is a very logical first start for building out a network like this. You've got multiple use cases, both for employee use and for the public use, um, and leveraging that to then maybe put an AP on the outside of the building so it's not all indoors, and then take your first hop out into the community and expand outward from your city buildings. That's the easiest approach there, and it's pretty cost effective in that you get multiple use cases. Also, near the core of city buildings, you have other use cases that can help justify that. Things like smart cities projects, IoT. Say you're in a downtown and you've got other opportunities for sensors or cameras, or even employees taking their lunch and still being able to take a work laptop and be on the secure network out in the community. There's lots of possibilities for you to help you justify those funds if you start at the middle and work your way out. But yeah, beyond that, it is pretty cost effective. Like I said, it's order of magnitude cheaper than running fiber to each one of those spots. And it's all depends on what you can, what the your city's appetite is for the different justifying the different use cases.
Yeah,
So
and I welcome follow up with if people are interested to dip their toe in the water, right, and begin to go down a path to look at it. There's a lot of support for trying to design in a small proof of concept, right, or a proof of value deployment, right. So to be able to take, I think, connectivity you have already within a building or within a library, and then to push it to the outdoor environment through the lighting infrastructure. Right? That's a common scenario. So welcome people, reaching out to me or to, we'll be back in touch with you. Love to have those conversations about, how to start down this path. And I do think it is worthwhile to also just connect in, what programs are already going on around your lighting infrastructure, right? So what else are you doing, and bringing those programs together so that they're kind of mutually beneficial if they're disconnected today.
absolutely. We probably have time for one more or two more questions, but right now, someone is asking if you could describe any permitting requirements with utility or otherwise that you've encountered in Mesa, Harry. So whether
Sure.
that's rates, tariffs, anything of that nature.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. Permitting, these are modifications to a public resource in the right of way. So these streetlights, you'll have to do an engineering study to show that your streetlights can take the extra weight of your Wi-Fi node, or of the broadband luminaire. I think they're about 10 pounds more than your normal light. So it's not a big ask for engineers to justify that. Just doing a quick wind load study on your pole to show that added weight won't cause an issue. Yeah, in the city of Mesa, we've got too many different pole types. I want to say we're up to like 40 different pole types. So we just had an engineer pre-certify the different scenarios of putting lights on those different pole types. We knew the ones that we were going to be hitting in the targeted zone. So we just had those pre-done and used that as a template for all the permits for the right of way. And that's mostly for the documentation for our right-of-way management for asset management and right-of-way management. So they know, our engineering department knows what's installed on any given pole. That's a whole other conversation, but that was the gist of the permitting requirements. Tariffs and utility requirements. I did mention we are our own energy utility for a good portion of the city of Mesa. Where we've run into another power utility where we have unmetered lighting. There is a tariff system where we have to work with the power utility to we give them the list of equipment and the power draw, and it just translates into a monthly bill, which we're already paying for the streetlights. It goes against the same bill because it's the same circuits. We just have a agreement between the IT and transportation department that manages the streetlights on who pays the bills, and we do that split in the financial system on the back end. But that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that answered a few questions as well too. So thank you for including that, Harry. We probably have time for one more, and I think this is often asked a lot. And I know, Scott, you touched on this slightly at the beginning of the presentation, but is any of your projects that you've worked on, Harry or Scott, have you run into any ethical concerns from the community? And maybe how do you handle those conversations?
Sure. I've mentioned the Real-Time Crime Center. I think that's the big one that always comes up. There is a definite pushback against surveillance. So the approach that we've taken is all opt-in. So in the communities where we have a need for the Real-Time Crime Center coverage, it's areas where the community is asking for it. We're not pushing it out onto people. And it's from businesses who are asking for it. Circle K is a great example. When we announced we had a real-time crime center, they were clamoring to give us access to the cameras in the corner stores. But also being very open to the community about what we will and will not do with that access is a big responsibility. So that's one where the making sure that we are clear to the community, we are not recording, that
Mhm.
it's not just taking a constant DVR of who's going down the street. It's a real-time crime center. So it's in an emergency incident. Somebody calls 911, they say, I'm at this location. They can bring up the cameras for that and see it in real time and have eyes on the scene immediately on an emergency. It's not a surveillance system. So that's a very big, you know, difference between in that conversation to make sure that that's it, because people want that. They want the eyes on the scene faster in an emergency. They don't want to be watched. So that's where
Yeah.
the ethical conversation comes in. Another one comes up in like we mentioned the connectivity. So um, and this goes back again to the libraries. We are not here to be the morality police on what you're accessing on the internet. Let me put it that way. Um, so there's, but there is certain ethical considerations. We have a responsibility as a provider that children may connect to have some web filters on our
Mhm.
connectivity. So there's a law in the books, the Child Internet Protection Act, CIPA, where our library has to comply with that and have certain web filters on the connectivity, but also allow for adults to override it. And again, this is back to the differences between the corporate network and the public network. Um, we we're not here to be a morality police. We're not here to control what people have access to on the internet. So again a conversation with the community about what they want out of this network. So
Yeah.
that's and what we're legally required to put.
Great, thank you. Well, we're close to time. I want to thank both Harry and Scott again for this great insights. Thank you for all of the questions. If we didn't get to them, we'll make sure to follow up with all of those. So I'll give you all a few more minutes if there's any other questions you would like to include. But I just wanted to thank Scott and Harry for today. Um, and if there's anything else you would like to end off with.
Thank you all. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Harry.
Okay,
Yes, thank you all.
thank you. Well, have a good day and hope you all enjoyed the webinar.